The house had always been a second home to me. My uncle, a man I deeply respected, had welcomed me with open arms since childhood. He was the kind of person who worked hard, built a life of discipline, and expected the same from those around him. His wife, on the other hand, was the opposite. Warm, understanding, and effortlessly graceful. She had a way of making people feel at ease, and maybe that was what drew me to her in ways I never should have allowed. It started as admiration. She was kind, always attentive when I visited. I'd grown up seeing her as my uncle's wife, someone who belonged to the family, but lately something had shifted. I began noticing things I hadn't before. The way she tucked her hair behind her ear, the way she laughed softly at my jokes, the way she always made sure I had eaten before I left. It was nothing at first, just small observations. But small things have a way of growing into something uncontrollable. Uncle is often away, his job demanding most of his time. She never complained, at least not openly, but there was an unspoken loneliness in her eyes. It was in the way she would sigh when she thought no one was watching, or how she lingered by the window a little too long after seeing him off. I told myself I was just being perceptive, that anyone would notice these things. But deep down, I knew I was paying attention because I wanted to. One evening, while I was visiting, my uncle casually mentioned an upcoming work trip. It wasn't unusual. He traveled often. This time, though, the news hit differently. I felt something stir inside me, something I shouldn't have felt. She smiled at his words, nodding like the supportive wife she was supposed to be, but her fingers tapped against the table, a small, restless movement. I wondered if she was dreading the solitude. The night continued as usual, dinner filled with casual conversations and laughter. She served food, refilled glasses, and ensured everyone was comfortable. But when her hand briefly brushed against mine while passing a dish, something changed. It was unintentional, a fleeting touch, but it sent a shiver through me. I looked at her, and for the briefest moment, I saw hesitation in her eyes, an uncertainty, as if she, too, felt something unspoken brewing between us. I barely ate after that, my mind clouded with thoughts I shouldn't have entertained. I focused on my uncle, listening to his stories, nodding at the right moments, but I wasn't really there. My mind was elsewhere, replaying that single touch, the way her fingers had felt against my skin. Later, as I was leaving, she walked me to the door like she always did. Normally, it was just a polite gesture, a habit ingrained in her. But this time, the air between us felt charged. We stood there for a second too long, silence stretching between us. Her lips parted slightly as if she wanted to say something, but she didn't. Instead, she gave me a small smile, one that didn't quite reach her eyes, and said, "Take care." Her voice was soft, almost hesitant, and for the first time, I questioned everything. Was I imagining it? Was I reading into things that weren't there? Or was this the beginning of something neither of us could stop? That night, sleep refused to come. I kept thinking about her, about the way she looked at me, the way her presence lingered in my mind. I told myself it was wrong, that she was off limits, but desire doesn't obey rules. It seeps into the cracks of logic, poisoning even the most well-intentioned thoughts. The next morning, I woke up with the same restlessness in my chest. I knew I should stay away for a while, give myself time to clear my head. But the more I tried to resist, the more I wanted to see her again. It was a dangerous path, and yet, I couldn't seem to turn back. Days passed, but the thoughts of her refused to leave me. I tried to busy myself, to find distractions, but nothing worked. Her face, her smile, even her voice haunted me. I knew it was wrong. I had no right to feel this way about her. Yet I couldn't help myself. Every time I thought of her, I felt a strange mix of excitement and guilt. I found myself visiting more often, using flimsy excuses just to see her. Sometimes I'd bring over food, claiming it was too much for me to finish alone. Other times, I'd pretend to need my uncle's advice, knowing full well he wasn't home. She never questioned it. If she suspected anything, she never let on. She welcomed me in every time, her face lighting up with genuine warmth. We began spending more time together, just the two of us. It started innocently enough, sitting in the living room, talking about mundane things. But our conversations grew deeper, more personal. She would share stories about her life before marriage, her dreams, and her regrets. I listened, hanging on to every word, amazed at how open she was with me. It felt special, like she trusted me in a way she didn't trust others. She often spoke about her loneliness, how hard it was with my uncle always being away. I could see the sadness in her eyes, the way she tried to hide it behind a smile. She never complained about him directly, but hinted at the emptiness his absence left behind. Her vulnerability made me feel protective, as if it was my responsibility to fill the void in her life. One afternoon, as we sat on the couch talking, she laughed at something I said, her eyes sparkling with joy. It was a beautiful sight, one that took my breath away. In that moment, I realized just how deeply I had fallen for her. It was no longer admiration or curiosity. It was love, real and overwhelming. I looked away, trying to hide my emotions, but I could feel her gaze lingering on me. From that day on, everything changed. Our interactions became charged with an unspoken tension. There was a new awareness between us, an acknowledgement of something more than friendship. She began to confide in me even more, her voice softer, more intimate. We shared secrets, laughed at inside jokes, and found comfort in each other's company. One evening, it started raining heavily while I was there. The downpour was relentless, and she insisted I stay until it eased up. We sat by the window, watching the rain together. She wrapped herself in a shawl, her hair slightly damp, her face illuminated by the soft glow of the lamp. She looked more beautiful than ever, and I found myself staring. She must have noticed because she turned to me, her eyes searching mine. For a moment, neither of us spoke. The only sound was the rain hitting the window pane. I wanted to tell her how I felt, to confess everything that had been tearing me apart inside. But I couldn't. I was terrified of ruining everything, of crossing a line that couldn't be uncrossed. Then she did something unexpected. She reached out and placed her hand on mine, her touch warm and gentle. It was a simple gesture, but it felt electric. My heart raced, my body tensed, and for a moment, I forgot how to breathe. She didn't pull away, and neither did I. We sat there, our hands intertwined, our hearts pounding in sync. The air between us was heavy with emotion. I could feel her pulse through her fingertips, a steady rhythm that matched my own. Her eyes were softer, filled with a tenderness I hadn't seen before. It was as if she was silently confessing everything we were too afraid to say out loud. I wanted to hold her, to never let go, but I knew we were treading dangerous ground. After a while, she pulled her hand back, her cheeks flushed. She avoided my gaze, clearly shaken by what had just happened. I could see the conflict in her eyes, the way she struggled to reconcile her feelings with her loyalty to my uncle. It was a cruel twist of fate, wanting someone you could never have. We sat in silence for the rest of the evening, the rain continuing to pour outside. When it finally stopped, I said my goodbyes and left, my heart heavy with longing and regret. As I walked away, I knew I was in too deep. This wasn't just infatuation or curiosity. It was love, raw and painful, and it was tearing me apart. The day my uncle left for his business trip, I couldn't shake the anticipation building inside me. I tried to convince myself that it was just another visit, that nothing would happen, but deep down I knew better. I was walking into temptation willingly, and the worst part was I didn't want to stop. When she opened the door, she seemed surprised to see me, but her eyes softened almost immediately. She welcomed me in, her smile warm, her presence comforting. There was an air of vulnerability about her, an unspoken sadness that made me want to protect her. I told myself that was all it was, concern, sympathy, but I was lying to myself. We spent the afternoon together, talking and laughing as usual. She looked happier, more at ease, and I convinced myself that my presence was helping her. We cooked dinner together, working side by side in the kitchen. It felt natural, like we were meant to be there together. I watched her move, graceful and effortless, and my heart ached with longing. After dinner, we sat in the living room, sipping tea as the evening settled in. The house was quiet, almost too quiet, and the silence between us felt heavy. I looked at her, the soft glow of the lamp reflecting in her eyes, and I knew I was losing the battle against my emotions. She seemed lost in thought, her gaze distant, and I wondered what she was thinking. Did she feel the same pull, the same magnetic force that I couldn't resist? Then, without warning, her eyes met mine, and the world stopped. There was no hesitation, no pretense, just raw, unfiltered emotion. I saw it in her eyes, the same longing that I'd been fighting for so long. It was there, undeniable and consuming. I couldn't look away, and neither could she. We were frozen, trapped in that moment, both terrified and exhilarated by the truth we couldn't ignore. She looked away first, her cheeks flushing as she tried to compose herself. But the damage was done. The air between us was electric, charged with everything we were too afraid to say. I could feel my heart pounding, my palms sweating, but I didn't move. I was afraid that if I did, the spell would break, and reality would come crashing back. I didn't know who moved first. Maybe it was her, maybe it was me, or maybe it was both of us surrendering to the inevitable. One moment we were sitting apart, and the next, she was in my arms, her body pressed against mine. Her lips were soft, hesitant at first, as if she was testing the waters. But then she melted into me, her arms wrapping around my neck, her fingers tangled in my hair. It was everything I had imagined and more. Her touch was warm, her scent intoxicating. I was lost in her, drowning in the sensation of her skin against mine. I kissed her with everything I had, all the pent-up desire, all the forbidden feelings I had been holding back for so long. She responded just as fiercely, her body arching into mine, her breath hot against my neck. Time lost all meaning. I didn't care about the consequences, didn't care about the world outside those walls. In that moment, she was mine and nothing else mattered. But as quickly as it started, it ended. She pulled away, her face flushed, her eyes wide with shock and guilt. She looked at me as if seeing me for the first time, and I saw the horror in her expression. She backed away, her hands trembling as she covered her mouth, her eyes filling with tears. I wanted to comfort her, to tell her that everything would be okay, but I couldn't find the words. I was just as shaken, just as guilty. We had crossed a line that could never be uncrossed, and there was no going back. She turned away, her shoulders trembling as she tried to regain her composure. I watched helplessly as she fought to control her emotions, the reality of what we had done sinking in. I knew I should say something, anything to make it better, but nothing felt right. What could I possibly say that would change the fact that we had betrayed my uncle, her husband? When she finally spoke, her voice was barely above a whisper. "This can't happen again," she said, her tone firm despite the tears in her eyes. I wanted to argue, to tell her that I loved her, that I didn't regret a single moment, but the pain in her voice stopped me. She was hurting, and I was the reason. I nodded, not trusting myself to speak. I felt hollow, like a part of me had been ripped away. She walked me to the door, her face a mask of composure, but her eyes betrayed her heartbreak. We stood there, inches apart, neither of us knowing how to say goodbye. I wanted to hold her, to tell her that we could find a way to make this work, but I knew it was pointless. She opened the door, her hand lingering on the doorknob as if she didn't want to let go. Her lips parted as if she was about to say something, but then she shook her head, her expression hardening. "You should go," she whispered, her voice cracking. I hesitated, my heart screaming at me to stay, but my feet moved on their own. I walked out of the house, the door closing softly behind me. As I stood there, staring at the closed door, I realized that everything had changed. I had crossed a line that could never be uncrossed, and there was no going back. The days that followed were unbearable. I couldn't eat, couldn't sleep, couldn't think about anything but her. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw her face, the way she had looked at me before everything fell apart. I replayed that